Hello and welcome to my video on risk management. My name is Edward Shehab, and in this video I'm going to discuss how we identify and document a risk. So let's just start by defining what a risk is. A risk is an uncertain event that, if it happens, would have one or more effects on one or more of your objectives. So basically, the effect is associated with some good or bad that would happen to one of your objectives. Sometimes we take a chance for something that's good, and sometimes we're very cautious because we're worried about something bad. So risk can be negative, and that's the term, that's the way we think about risk, that it is a negative thing. But risk can also be a positive thing, and that would be the case, obviously, if you're an investor, you buy property or you buy stocks, then you're hoping for positive risk to happen. The word risk is associated with chance. So we talk about the risk of the property going up in price. I know you wouldn't say that. You say the chance or the likelihood of the property going up in price. This is when you're hoping for something good to happen. In other words, the term risk is interchangeable with the term chance. All right, so now that we know that the term risk is associated with chance, then there's a chance of something good happening and a chance of something bad happening. Risk itself is associated with objectives. So if you're on a project and you have a very tight schedule or a limited budget, right, then any action or any uncertain event or anything unexpected that could make you miss or give you a chance that you would miss the timeline or go over the budget is going to be considered a risk for you. Let's assume for a second, or let's assume that you don't have any limitation on how long the project can take. If you don't have that kind of limitation on all you have is a limitation on budget, then we can say that there's a risk to the budget, but there is no risk to the time. Why? There is no deadline. You can take as long as you want. There is no risk to that timeline. So basically, you cannot have a risk if there are no objectives. Now, in my opinion, risk is widely misunderstood. Why? People tend to focus on the effects, right? For example, they talk about a risk of delay. They talk about a risk of going over budget. They talk about a risk of not being able to complete the project. Typically, when people are thinking about risk, they're actually thinking about what? They're thinking about the effect. They're not thinking about the risk. They're not wondering what will go wrong to have that kind of an effect. They're thinking about the effect itself as the risk. So the risk of delay is really a risk that would have the effect of being delayed. But what is the risk that would cause the delay effect, right? A risk of going over budget. What is going to cause your project to go over budget? The effect is going over the budget. But what is the risk? What is it that has to happen or that could happen that is uncertain, that you don't know for sure that it's going to happen, that if it happens, it's going to have some sort of a negative outcome on your project or your plans. So that is the risk, the uncertainty, the unknown part, right? Let's use a very basic example. You wake up in the morning at your typical time and you're going to work and you drive typically about half an hour. You go through downtown and you know there's a lot of cars on the road, and typically half an hour is enough for you to get to work. The risk is you get stuck in traffic behind slow cars. The risk is there could be an accident on the road. The risk is you could have an accident on the road. The risk is you could have a mechanical problem. The risk is there's a detour on the road. So the risk is whatever could happen along the way that would block you from getting to your place of business within the timeline that you want. So let's assume nothing is on the road that stands in your way. Let's assume you leave just on time and traffic is, very seamless, a normal level of traffic, no accident along the way. People are driving really nice, no problems on the road. You will get there on time. So it's not that you left during rush hour or peak period that is going to cause you to be late. It's what could happen along the way that would result in you being late. If nothing happens along the way, then you're not going to be late. But we do know that when you leave at that time, let's say it's 7:45 or 8 a.m., there's heavy traffic. So that is the cause, or the one thing that worries you about driving at that time. The risk is something would have to happen along the way, which will result in the effect of you being late. All right. Now, so there is a structure that says, there's got to be a cause, which is a fact that is non-negotiable, that could give rise to that risk, and that risk is the unknown or the uncertain event that could happen along the way, and the effect would be the outcome in case you are exposed to that risk, right? Or in case you encounter that risk. All right, I want to show you this nice butterfly. I'm going to consider the left side of it as the cause. The middle side is the risk, which is the butterfly itself. So the left wing is the causes, and the right wing is going to be the effects. Now, a risk may be caused by one or more causes, and if it happens, could have one or more effects. Let's take a look at a simple example of this one guy that I have him down here in the picture. You see him, this guy, he's slipping. He's not dancing. He just slipped on maybe a wet floor, or I don't know why he slipped. So what I want to analyze is, why did this one guy slip? All right. So what I've put down here on the left are all causes. I just put a few. So I have wet floor. He's on medication or maybe on drugs. The area is dark. There are no proper signs. There's an object on the floor. Could be a banana, could be a stone, could be anything. He is not wearing proper gear. And there could be a few things. Maybe he left his glasses at home. Maybe someone pushed him. There could be many different reasons. The floor was wet. Could be many different reasons why this person slipped. So him slipping is the risk. Now, there's a chance that all these things will be there, or or a wet floor, he's on medication, the area is dark, and he may still not slip. Do you agree? There's still a chance he may not slip. So him slipping is an unknown. It's an uncertainty. It may or may not happen. On the right-hand side, what you see are the effects. And I go all the way from nothing to blowing up the world. Yeah, I'm not crazy. I do mean it. He could blow up the world. Let me explain how. But I'll tell you that later. Just hang on for a little bit, right? It starts with nothing. Babies or kids, toddlers, they fall and they get up, right? Nothing happens to them. So let's assume this guy slips, falls, gets up, and continues back, doesn't even affect his suit or jacket. He just continues to his meeting or to his work, right? There's a possibility. How many times have you fallen and gotten up? No problem, right? So that could happen. But there's also a possibility that could be injury to yourself or to others, or you could do damage to the property, or you could result in claims. Either you will have a claim against your organization or the organization against you for property damage. There could be loss of productivity, loss of morale, many different things, or it could be death. Maybe you fall and you fall off the edge, you land somewhere not so nice, and you end up dead. But you could also be slipping in a very maybe high-risk area where there's the nuclear button on the wall, and you slipped and your foot just accidentally kicked or pressed on that nuclear button and you blew up the whole world. Now, this is really far-fetched, but what I'm trying to point out here is that when you fall or when a risk happens, the range of effects could be anywhere from nothing all the way to some massive, massive loss. How much of an effect you're going to have? Now, that depends on historical data. If you have any kind of data that describes the typical effects that happen from such incidents, then you can probably guess a good medium to use. So car accidents, for example, could go anywhere from barely a noticeable scratch all the way to a total loss of the car or a total loss of life, right? So it could happen anywhere along that spectrum. But for sure, if the guy slips here, one of these effects is a possibility. For sure, if you have an accident with your car, one of the typical outcomes is a possible effect, right? But there's always a chance that that you don't have the accident. And there's always a chance that this guy who was walking on a wet floor, on medication, on drugs, don't know what he did the night before, in a very dark area with no signs, even not focusing, he's looking at his phone, right? And still may not fall. The effects are only felt if he actually falls. If he doesn't fall, the effects would not be felt. All right, so let's just try to put some structure to this. A risk must have some causes, one or more causes, for it to happen. There is no risk if there's nothing that causes us to be concerned. What is going to cause you to be concerned? Something that is a fact, a realistic condition, a general condition. It could be the economy that worries you about some risk to your business. It could be constant money, currency value fluctuation that worries you about some aspect of your portfolio. But there's got to be some general conditions that we consider facts, non-negotiable facts, that would have to be there to give rise to the possibility of risk. Let's say historically suppliers get stuck at customs. Maybe they're delivering internationally, right? They get stuck at customs, and 3 out of 10 times there's a problem, or half of the time there's a problem at customs. Then we say that that's a general condition of our business or our environment, and that gives rise to the risk that the supplier may get stuck at customs. So you got to have that general condition, the state of things, the state of the organization, the country, the employees, something that you know of as a fact that is non-negotiable, that is agreed upon, that gives rise to the feeling or to the mindset that something could go wrong, which is the risk, right? And if the risk happens, any one of these effects could be felt, right? So let's just summarize again. Before you can put down a risk, you need to understand the project or the task at hand, understand the environment in which it's going to be run, understand the people involved, understand the rules, understand the processes, the terms, the conditions, understand the market. Basically analyze the environment of this one project and ask yourself, what do I know that's a fact, that is worrisome, that I need to consider, jotting down a risk for, right? I realize, for example, that the price of the dollar keeps going up and down, and they have a war with the euro, right? And my investment heavily depends on buying products from Europe. Well, that's a concerning thing. Then I need to document it, right? That I would list a risk associated with currency because of the constant currency valuation variation between dollar and euro that we have seen over the last year or two. There's a chance that my purchase could happen at a time that the euro is too pricey, which will result in me paying more for my products. See, here you see that I have a very well-defined background to my concerns. It doesn't come out of thin air. I have seen incidents, I've seen it over the last year or two, and that's what makes me worry about this one risk event, and I can jot down this risk event. The effect can be a calculated effect on, what would be the typical variation that I would expect in the euro value against the dollar and multiply it by the products that I need to buy. So basically, you need to figure out the causes, and these have to be agreed upon facts. If you just simply write basic things on your risk statements and you just say, there's a risk of delay and there's a risk of supply being late, and you show it to your boss, don't be surprised if your boss looks at you and says, this is garbage. You're just doing it because you just want to show off that you're doing risk management, but these are not risks. We can't take them seriously. The only way your boss or anyone else is going to take your risk statement seriously is when the cause is believable, or the conditions or the basis for your concern are real. Then you say, okay, now I have this one concern which, if it happens, could have these kinds of outcomes. All right. Many people are used to using the if-then statements. If the euro goes up in price, then our purchase is going to cost us higher, right? If is the risk, in other words, right? So if is the risk. then is the effect. If the euro goes up higher, then our cost is going to be more. If the euro goes higher is the risk. But the question is, what's making you think that the euro could go up? What is the general condition or the cause for this concern? If it's baseless, there's no basis for why you think the euro is going to go up. Let's say for the last 5 years, they've been steady. The euro versus the dollar have been very steady. No variation, no fluctuation, minimal fluctuation. And you go tell your boss, if the euro goes up in price, they'll just laugh at you, right? But if it has been, varying for the last year or two, or even the last 6 months, then your boss listens, right? Because you have a base, or you have something you can claim against and say, this is the reason I have this risk listed. If that background wasn't there, then the risk would not be believable. That background is the basis, is the cause for why you think this risk exists. The risk is not guaranteed to happen. It may not happen. Yes, you may have had fluctuations with the euro-dollar valuations, but there's a chance that you get a steady price at the time that you purchase, and you do not encounter that one risk. And if not, then the effect will not be felt. If you do encounter it, then some sort of an effect can be felt. I'm hoping this video sheds enough light for you to feel confident enough in taking on maybe some risk identification tasks on your next project or activity. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Put your comments down there. I'm not just saying it to say it, but I would actually respond back to you. I'll be curious to know your experiences with risk management, how your organization does risk assessment, and whether you think that what I'm stating makes sense, or whether you have a different point of view. I'll be very curious to know how you manage your own risk. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to share this video if you think others will benefit from it. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. You will see frequent videos about twice a week at this time, or as many as possible. But we try to put some fresh content out there. And if you're in the field of projects, programs, portfolios, risk, business analysis, or in a leadership role, then you're going to find our videos very meaningful and directly related to what you do. Hope to have you as a subscriber, and hope to see you on the next video.